In the last few weeks, we have been having continuous discussions about Sri Lanka's crisis. And for those Sri Lankans living abroad, the situation they see can be quite dumbfounding. They've never seen their country like this. So what is the root of the problem? Is it corruption alone that brought us here? With us today is Professor Nimanthi Perera Rajasingham, an associate professor at Colgate University with research and teaching interests in women and gender studies, globalization and transnational studies, ethnic studies, and Marxism. She's of mixed parentage, and having been through the war, she sees much deeper issues in Sri Lanka than the corruption alone that has brought the country to its knees. She joins us from New York today. Welcome, Nimanthi, and thank you so much for joining us on Sri Lanka Life. Let's talk. Now, you have an interesting theory that the crisis we have today is not just about corruption. What, aside from corruption, do you believe are the primary causes of Sri Lanka's economic crisis?
So obviously corruption, I'm not dismissing it, right? It's a big thing. It's a huge problem and it has to be dealt with clearly. There's been a long period where we've given up on anything called economic independence and thought that integrating into the global marketplace and will resolve our problems. And here we are, right? In greater and greater debt. So I think the long answer is neoliberalism, and then there are multiple factors along the way that have accelerated that crisis. But I think in the next few years, we'll see a whole host of countries in a similar situation to Sri Lanka.
So if you put the causes for this economic crisis in a nutshell, what would they be?
It's this belief, right, that being more and more exposed to global markets without any regulations will solve our problems. And it's a belief that we don't need to have any kind of financial self-sufficiency in anything, right? That this import-export economy will manage things for us. It's that belief. I think that's the problem.
What do you feel should be our primary focus in the process of resolving this crisis?
The economic crisis is a political crisis, right? I mean, if we don't have different political leaders with a vision in place, this is going to continue. Right, I always think of the present moment as, you have a bad stack of cards and you keep reshuffling it and you think you can fool people into thinking the outcome will be different. We have to have different leadership, right? We have to think of people who participated in these mass protests, who've tried to think about different answers through conversations, either at golfes or different, spaces. And really try to think of new ways of answering this question. Because right now, clearly the members of parliament don't have answers. How do you rethink the economy so we don't continue on the same trajectory of greater and greater debt?
So when you were here in Sri Lanka, you spent some time at Gota Gogama and felt the power of the protest, like you said, the power of collective action. Do you think the protesters will get what they want?
The protest is not just here we are saying Rajapaksa go, Gotabaya go, we need new leadership. That's part of it, right? But for me, the other part of it is it's kind of a laboratory for thinking about democracy, right? It's a space where people are, they've set up libraries, they're thinking about knowledge, they've set up the artists come together. I went to a whole bunch of theater performances there, right? And what's beautiful is they're having conversations about what does democracy really look like. And that is the space for democracy, not our elected officials.
So with the way the situation is currently escalating, there doesn't seem to be any solution in sight. What do you see for the future of Sri Lanka?
The larger political picture looks very negative to me, unless something radically changes, right? But we can ask ourselves, okay, that's there and we want to change that. But meanwhile, what are these ways we can think for ourselves about surviving? And I think that's essential.
And the protests will continue until the goals are met, I'm sure. But what has come out of it, like you said, is that sense of mutual sharing, supporting one another, and most of all, a conversation about democracy, a most important imperative in a burgeoning democracy like Sri Lanka. Thank you, Nimanthi, for adding some clarity into the larger picture. Do check us out, subscribe and follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram and LinkedIn.
World of risks and obstacles, we are there to help you reach your goals. With 12 billion rupees worth of customer benefits in 2020 and a life insurance fund worth over 100 billion rupees. Our strength is your strength. You focus on your goals. We will take care of the risks. Sri Lanka Life.